Hey everybody, I'm so excited to be here today with Sam Gutman. That's how you pronounce your name. I think, right? I usually ask people, how do you pronounce your name? Because there's, you know, random pronunciations half the time that I don't know about, but that's how you pronounce your name, right?
Gutman, yes, yes, that's how I say it.
Awesome. It was right. So I'm really excited to be here with Sam. And before we launch into this conversation with him, I would just like you, Sam, to introduce yourself to anybody who's listening so that they have an idea of who you are, what you're about, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me on. I'm super stoked to be here and to just talk about, what I do and the world of music. And
Yeah.
so my name is Sam Gutman, and I play keyboards and synths of various kinds. I play in my original project Out of the Beard Space, and I play for Miss Lauryn Hill, the hip hop singer. And I do various kinds of like educational YouTube content, and I also am one of the co-directors of the Beardfest Music Festival in South Jersey.
Awesome. So you have your hand in so many different pots that I think it's really awesome that we have you here to talk about what it's like to kind of split your time between so many things. I mean, some of the stuff that you're doing right now is pretty demanding in terms of your schedule, in terms of where you're supposed to be, but you're still kind of able to, impact different people in different places at the same time that you're doing all of that.
Sure. So is the question, how do I like manage doing
Well, I
multiple?
mean, just a statement. So this is something that you'll learn in our conversation that I kind of put those things out there. But yeah, the question is, how do you manage all of that stuff? I mean, the demanding schedule, the travel, and then also being able to teach people about music in addition to playing it.
Sure. Well, one answer is that not all those things are playing out at the same time. So, um, my festival Beardfest just ended, and that's a big weight off my shoulders
I
for
bet.
at least a few months until we have to like start uh, revving up that whole machine again in the fall. Um, but while that was sort of in its crunch time, I did that also intersected with a heavy period of shows with Lauryn Hill, and that was very difficult. But luckily, I can do my Beardfest stuff remotely, so I was, joining Zoom calls and answering emails and making various kinds of like digital media content from everywhere. Um, and as far as the students go, teaching was my main thing for a long time.
Yeah.
Teaching privately, it all went remote during COVID, and I kind of never came back from doing it remote just because I liked it so much. I was driving around to kids' houses, and then once I didn't have to do that, I just stopped doing it. But
Realize how nice it is to just like click a button and they appear, right?
yes, yes. But my teaching did kind of dwindle down to now nothing. At least as far as like actual private students. But I still make like educational content, um, pre-recorded for YouTube. But
Nice.
as far as doing all of it, um, I think that I thrive off of being busy in a certain way. Um, th- there are certain anxieties that come with it. It's not easy to be crammed with a bunch of stuff, especially when none of it is on a regular kind of schedule. It's all just like, here's my list of things that I have to do, not always in a particular order, not always with particular deadlines, but here are the various things that I'm obligated to. That some people have the luxury of just like, here's my window of time that I can
Right.
sort of mentally devote to this is my work life. And then when that window of time ends, it's like family life or hobby life or whatever else it is. And it all sort of blends together with me. And that can be tough. Um, but it is fulfilling. And there's other kinds of anxieties that creep in when I have too much free time too. So
Yeah. I can really relate to that. I think I'm a similar type of person in terms of, being busy all of the time and having a number of different things that are kind of spinning at once. And I don't know what to do with myself when, some of those plates stop spinning, right?
right.
That's where I start to really fall apart and question my my existence, right? Why am I
Yeah.
busy anymore. And it sounds like that is a bit of what plagues you as well. Is this?
For sure. When you're busy, you're not asking yourself like existential questions of like, where am I at? And am I doing the right things? And am I, is
Mhm.
this, is my whole existence like, am I doing it right or whatever? Like you're
Yeah.
not asking, you're just doing. And there is a certain um simplicity in that.
Mhm.
There's a certain complexity in it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I do think sometimes that it can be a good thing to slow down and take stock of, oh my God, I'm doing all of these different things. What actually am I doing, or what purpose do all these different things serve? I think that's a good thing to do on occasion,
Oh yeah.
especially when we're looking for, the next phase of growth to take place. But in general, I think a lot of artists or creative people are people like you and me who are just kind of going all of the time, and moving from one thing to the next. And I find that with the artists that I work with often, whether they be you know musicians like yourself, or visual artists, or other types of creators, that um oh my goodness, I lost my thought. Hold on. uh, I know that
You were kind
I
of talking about how it's just like good to slow down and
yes, right.
yeah.
That constant movement, even when they are forgetting to slow down, that constant movement actually helps their uh creative energy, their creative generation, to keep moving forward. Do you
Yeah.
find that that is where your creative propulsion comes from, is the constant moving as well?
My creative propulsion, there's a balance to strike, and I know that that's somewhat of like a trite answer because like of course there's a balance to strike, but it's not my ideal balance to be crushingly busy. And sometimes I am, and when I am, it's unfortunate. And I think that I've gotten better at saying no to things and managing my time better. Still, there are periods of time that just like unfortunately intersect in a way that I can't always control. That sometimes have me busier than I want to be. Um, but I do like to do things like it became not quite a tradition, but one thing that I've done several times is after the festival ends in June, I've like driven across the country and back or something like that. Just like all right, I did the big thing and now I'm gonna have a chill summer,
Yeah.
and and doing something like that where I'm away for like a month or a month and a half and you do actually have to kind of drop all your stuff is, like you said, a good way to sort of be mindful of the things you're doing in life and taking that reflective time to think about what direction you should go into, and like when I get back to the area to more mindfully put the pieces of my life back together and
Right.
maybe leave this or that out, and things like that, just sort of hit a hard reset.
Right. Because especially now, as you're on tour right now, you're going back and forth from one place to another. That can be a really, fragmenting kind of experience, I imagine, right? For someone to be bouncing from one city to another, and then back home, and then another city or another country, and then back home, to really keep their mind wrapped around their life and the other projects that you're having go on. Because like you said, you were also managing this year's iteration of Beardfest, right?
Yeah, yeah. There are lots of things about like the life of playing a lot of shows, and especially if those shows require a lot of travel, that are not conducive to like stability, uh, both in terms of like your like orienting your mind around how you structure your day, just because every day is different, but then also just like physiologically, sleep schedules and things like
Right.
that. Like I definitely notice that when I'm if I have to be at like an 8 a.m. sound check, or if I have rehearsal until like 2 or 3 in the morning, which both of those instances are things that are common. Those sorts of things, I notice it hurts my ability to like emotionally regulate and
Mm.
stay balanced and feel good, and so I have to like make sure that I'm like making up that time somewhere, getting enough sleep, eating well, things like that.
Yeah. Are there things that you have found work better for yourself in terms of your your self-care, so to speak, that that you go to more regularly?
One self-care thing that I have is playing Zelda. I'm just gonna be honest.
Zelda? Okay, we'll put it out there. That's awesome.
Like I'll get home from a trip, and then I'll like take the next day to just like lay in bed. The new Zelda Tears of the Kingdom game came out. I'll just like lay
Nice.
and play
Yeah.
that for a few hours and just give
Yeah.
myself that day, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So stopping in the midst of the constant going that we were just talking about being really important and actually helpful in some respects, actually taking a day in the middle of all of that going
For
to
sure.
stop and just do something that is fun and that doesn't really take a lot of brain power,
Sure, yeah.
is so important to you. That's what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah. But also so that's in like a very micro, like here's how I decompress
Yes.
over the
Right.
course of the day sense, but there is a more macro, like I was saying, various things about the daily schedule are not conducive to like stability, but in other ways, the life of an artist more broadly is also not conducive to stability. Um,
Mm-hmm.
not only in terms of the scheduling, but just in terms of like there's no one way to do it. Nobody really knows exactly like what like how to achieve the thing that they're trying to achieve. There's a million ways
Wow.
to
Yeah.
go about it. And also, for the most part, artists are like whether it's a painting or music that you're putting out. I can speak to music. You know, like you put out a song, you put out an album. For the most part, like the world doesn't really pay attention. You know, you
Mm,
release a song, it gets a few plays, it gets a few views, whatever, but it's not some, you know, like maybe some people like go viral overnight, and that comes with a whole other dark side
right.
of anxieties. But
Sure.
for the most part, um, the life of an artist in multiple ways is tough, and a sort of more macro strategy that I think I've gotten a little bit better at in more recent times to like manage that kind of thing is to not like is to be far more in touch with like a long arc of progress over the course of years than I am invested in any one thing like
Right.
going viral or what or anything like that. You know, like
Yeah.
um just knowing that like if you just kind of exist as an artist and like you put things out there and you just do what you do and you meet people over time, like eventually things lead to things and you never know where things lead.
Right.
And being like comfortable in that is probably the biggest strategy for mental stability in
Yeah.
the art world that I have come across. Rather, because if it's not that, then it's just like this constant, like you put out a song and like, I hope this gets big, and then it doesn't, and then you're
Yeah.
crushed. Or here's my
Yeah.
YouTube channel, I hope it gets 1 million subscribers,
Right.
and then you're crushed.
Yeah,
And
I mean, especially in the world that we live in today of like vanity metrics, right? Like how many followers do I have? How many downloads do I have, right? You know, and to some extent those things are important and they have their place, right? But they can't be the end all be all to your to how you view and measure success,
right,
right? And I like that image of the long arc, right? The long arc that you were just talking about. You know, we almost have to like attach ourselves to a drone and like get ourselves above everything to be able
right,
to see, you know, that trajectory that you're on. Because in the day to day, we're so like focused on that thing that we have to do. I have to play this show tonight, or I have to, you know, go to this opening tomorrow, that we can lose sight of the the overall progress of our artistry, right? Our purpose.
yeah, and just like some amount of faith that over the course of years, like it'll work out.
Yeah. Yeah,
Sort
but
of, and just sort of trusting in that.
trusting in it. Yeah. I mean, it can be hard to have trust in like life in general, but trusting that you are where you're supposed to be or where you need to be right now, is 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 a big test, right? Because I think so many people want to just like launch out there really fast, but I've seen and I've worked with enough artists to know that when they do hit that jet propulsion button immediately, or somebody else hits it for them because of one reason or another, the burnout rate is so incredibly high for those people that, you know, they just cease to exist, in terms of you know, the world of their art or their music anymore, right?
For sure. Just a few years ago, I was gonna like do something else entirely. It was like post COVID, which
Yeah.
was a weird time, and that burnout is incredibly real. Um, and there was a time that I was like gonna like go deeper into like tech stuff, maybe do a coding boot camp or something like that.
Nice. Okay.
I was frustrated, and I was just like, like what can I like? Can't I just have some skill set and just like execute it upon the world and just get paid for real
Just get
and just
paid.
have like a normal life, like
Right.
I was close to doing that for sure.
Yeah.
I'm still fascinated by tech stuff, and maybe someday I'll try to like learn some coding language or
Sure,
get.
like maybe that could be something that you do for yourself, and like if income comes from that, then that's great. But what I'm hearing you say is like that was a period of time where you were really feeling like, can I stay in this world of music and performance for
Yeah,
much longer? Like, do I need to really shift? I think it's so funny that artists, because you're not the only creative that has said that to me. Like, you know, I hit a point in my career or in my work where I was like so burnt out that I thought about going and getting like, you know, some 9 to 5 job. um it's funny that we kind of go in that direction, and everybody else is like looking at artists and creatives and being like, man, I need to quit this 9 to 5 job and I need to live that life because it's so much better, right? Everybody, I don't think that the grass is greener on the other side of the fence necessarily, right? We all have our stuff that we run up against, and typically run up against it because we're burning the candle at both ends. We're not taking care of ourselves. We're not able to kind of take stock of the longer view and perspective, and that's when a stop from all the busyness is really important, right?
for sure. There can be this grass is greener thing, when I'm like not getting sleep, or if I'm too busy, I'm thinking like, man, like some people just go to work, they get home, and then they're home.
Yep. Yep.
And but maybe but then there's other times where I'm like, man, like I'm on like a cruise in Mexico right now, or like I am like
Right.
doing this cool thing, and I'm like, it's hard, it's a grind, but it's cool.
Right.
And um overall, I think I couldn't be happy doing any one thing. I kind of
Mm.
always have to keep moving. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's one thing that keeps me that sustains me, is like just having a varied life.
A varied life. Yeah, I'm totally with you there. And I think that that's important. Another, you know, part of my life, one of my variations is that I'm a therapist as well. And doing therapy with people day in and day out is a recipe for total disaster and burnout too. Um, and I was just talking to somebody right before this, but um about this the same kind of thing. And one of the old white men who I think they invented psychology a couple hundred years ago, I forget who it was saying, you know, you cannot, and this is probably one of the only things that the old white guy, you know, was smart about. Like, you can't actually do therapy, be a therapist 24/7, because you're just gonna be annihilated because it's so heavy and it's all this stuff. That's not important for our conversation, but what's important for our conversation is having variation in your day to day, to not only like keep you from burning out or getting bored or whatever, but to also fuel the creative power, that you can then bring back to, you know, one of the other areas of your life that is interesting.
Sure. Part of the variation that at one point I was considering was being a therapist.
Nice. come
Yeah,
on over to the dark side. It's pretty good. You can get a boring looking room like this.
it's a cool looking room. What are you talking? You got a nice lighting.
Thank you.
Yeah, I ended up kind of ultimately being like, you know what, like talking to students all day takes so much social energy out of me that I don't think I could also be a therapist. But
Yeah,
the variation that would have been like scratching an itch for was doing something that in a more direct, um, deliberate way was mostly for the benefit of other people, you know. And there are ways that you could rationalize and say that like music is that too. People certainly do it, but
sure.
I think that there's like a certain selfishness to art, like you're enacting your creative will upon the world, and certainly if you're pursuing it in a serious way, you're kind of always screaming from the rooftops for the world to pay attention to you.
Yeah.
And that's a weird position to be in. It's always something that I've had a funny relationship with, and kind of only like reluctantly engaged in that because I realize how like whether it's going well or poorly, deriving your like sense of self-worth from the validation of others is like problematic, even if it's like working out, you know.
Yeah.
It might even be a whole other layer of a, I don't know if I can curse on here, but like but like a
Sure.
mind fuck if
Yeah.
going well, you know. And so I was like, and so being a therapist at one point, that seemed like something that was like just helping people, and something that I felt that maybe I had the empathy and the capacity to
Mm,
do. And even like even walking down that path even slightly, like I remember one time I read On Becoming a Person by Carl Rogers,
yeah.
or I listened to the audiobook. I don't remember most of, I think I finished it, but there was like one idea that jumped out to me, which was that therapy is very much like creating a relationship with a person within which they can heal,
Hmm.
and that you are part of it by engaging in that relationship. It's not necessarily just giving them space to talk.
Right.
It's not necessarily giving them advice or something. It's creating a relationship within which somebody can heal. And that actually informed a lot of my like teaching strategy of like, oh, actually,
I
what I
love
really
that.
want to do with students is like create a relationship within which they can grow and get better.
Yeah.
How do I have to be in my energy with them that they can grow?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Look at you. You're a Rogerian. That's where you're at. You're a Rogerian. Carl Rogers. That was Carl Rogers is the guy that like formed a lot of my therapeutic framework when I was becoming a therapist. He was one of the first like classic old school therapists that we were introduced to. And it's that relationship. And I think also as a musician, you can, and as a visual artist, or creating art for people to engage with in general, can be looked at, if kind of done in a way, can be looked at providing a space for a relationship with oneself to occur as well, right? And so in a way, I don't think therapists are that different from artists, or artists are that different from therapists. It's like, how do we do that? I see therapy very much as an art form. It's both an art and a science.
Mm.
The way I practice it is an art form, an art of relationship kind of thing. And I'm hearing that's where kind of maybe if you came over to the dark side, that's where you would play as well.
Why is that the dark side?
I don't know, man. I'm just saying it's actually a very rewarding, experience to be able to sit with somebody in a situation that's very different than the one that you and I are having right now, but sit with them and they trust me with some of the stuff that maybe they haven't told any other human being on the face of the planet before, and believe and trust that I'm going to hold that in confidence, and I'm going to allow them to explore that. That is something that nobody else, um, other than therapists usually have the opportunity to truly experience. And that is definitely not dark at all. That is something that is really, really rewarding, and it's really humbling. And if you ever have an opportunity to either go and get a degree or pursue that, or even to just become like a peer kind of peer counselor or something like that, that could fill some of that as well. But it's a really great experience. You were saying you were talking about um how being an artist or a creator can be like a very self-indulgent or a self focused pursuit. My story to coming to where I am now, being a therapist for about a decade, was I reached a point, like I had spent a decade in marketing and brand development, in uh design and stuff like that, for nonprofit organizations. And I got to this point where it was either I was going to go back to school and get my MFA, or I was going to diverge and go in the direction that I did go in, which was psychology and counseling psych. And I knew that my own self, like where I came from as a person, as a kid, as a teen, tends to be pretty like navel gazy, like and going and getting an MFA is very much that kind of thing, where it has the tendency to bring you to that place where you're so focused on your inner world, and you kind of isolate yourself away from anything else. Whereas, and I knew that that would be self-destructive for me, and so what I did was I chose the other path, where I could connect with other people, and I could use my skills, and I can use my talents or gifts, whatever, in that arena, but it wouldn't be so isolating. And I find that when artists do that, they also explode or implode.
So you're the one that turned away from the dark side. You were interested in people and human psychology, and instead of using it to sell people things, you decided to use it to help people heal.
100%. It came to the point where, I was tired of sitting across the table, even though I worked for organizations that had people's best interests at heart, in general. I worked for nonprofit organizations, some NGO kind of type places. But the work that I was doing was really focused on obtaining the funds for the work, right? So I wasn't necessarily engaged in the humanitarian stuff. So I got tired of like sitting in rooms with people, trying to come up with solutions and learning about what makes people respond to certain things in certain ways in order to get them to give $1 or
Yeah.
$1 million, right? It's like, how can I use this in a way that's actually going to impact somebody's life, and I don't feel like I'm selling the next
Yeah.
thing anymore. Yeah, so I guess in a way, yeah, I did turn from the dark side and went towards the lighter side of things.
Nice. Yeah, I guess it was like which kid do we put on the pamphlet of the Save the Children thing that makes the people sign up for where sorry, one second.
Yep,
They're knocking on my hotel room door.
that's okay.
No, thank you. Okay.
It's okay. Housekeeping.
Yeah.
um what was I going to say? Yeah, exactly, right? Like, which picture works, which evokes the most emotion, what is going to get somebody to respond, right? Yeah, that just gets old after a while, and you start to wonder, like, what is the actual purpose of this?
Yeah.
It's a big question. I want to, if we can, in just the last few minutes that we have, talk a little bit about your experience co-founding a music festival, because that is, this is a little self-indulgent for me now, because like I love festivals. I love, just the atmosphere that's created, the community that's cultivated. But I also know that it must be just like a ton of work to pull something
Line of
like that
work.
off, right? And I think I was, if I'm remembering what I read correctly, you guys started out in like a backyard space, right? And then it just has grown into this larger production now.
Yeah, yeah. So we started the first year of Beardfest was 2012, and it was in our guitar player Zach's backyard. And we had been throwing parties there for a while, but we at one point decided to just like call it a festival and book more bands. And we didn't know really what festivals were at that point. It was really in between that and the next year when we sort of got a glimpse of like the jam band festival world.
Mhm.
that
Yep.
that not only did we realize, oh, this is a thing, and here's how we should do it. We could have workshops and live art and this and that. But we also realized that we as a band could fit into that scene. Like,
Mm.
here's actually a place where weird bands can go and play sick shows and be well received.
Yeah.
And that sort of marked the transition from us just being this like prog band that like was following in the footsteps of like Zappa and Yes and King Crimson to
Yeah.
like sort of like a proggy jam band, you know.
Nice.
And
Yep.
we also love to improvise anyway, so it was
Yeah.
like like we can improvise on stage. That's a thing. People do that. So yeah, we so then 2013 was sort of the first like legit year. And then it just grew and grew ever since. We've just still we're here we are. Sometimes I can't believe that we're still here doing it 11 years later.
Yeah.
And that it is what it is. But yeah, it's one of the most special things in my life, pulling
Hmm.
it off with a big group of all my closest friends
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's connected. It was initially connected to Out of Beard Space, right? That to your band.
Yeah, yeah. The band is Out of the Beard Space, and the festival is Beard Fest, and it's still connected. It's still, like we still headline the festival every year.
Yeah.
Um,
So it was all you guys from the band created Beard Fest,
yes.
and it still got, that's amazing. 11 years in. And you guys are still, is it all the original band members, or have you guys kind of pulled people in and out over the years? Because 11 years is a pretty decent length of time too to be
Yeah,
playing.
there hasn't been a whole lot of personnel switching over the years. We in 2016, I think we added another drummer when so we added our our second drummer Mike Mahoney in 2016 when our original drummer Ethan needed a break. People need breaks. The band grind is not easy
Totally.
at all. He took a something like a year off, and Mike came in, and then Ethan came back, and then it's just been both of them ever since.
Nice.
Yeah. And we also have two bass players, and at times, like one or the other has stepped out.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, and I'm missing more shows than ever before, which is sad. Um, and so yeah, it's like people come in and out, but it's generally the same cast of characters, and everybody also has a role on the festival. Like we actually run the festival. You know, it's
Yeah.
some bands have a festival and maybe they started off running it, but like I don't know anything about Camp Bisco, but I assume that at one point the Disco Biscuits actually ran it and then maybe they handed it off.
Right.
Whereas something like the Roots Picnic, the Roots, you know, Questlove wasn't like running the box office. You know, probably never was a thing.
Right.
Uh, I don't know how that arrangement works, but we run the festival like for real. And so yeah, like you said, it's really difficult. It's a lot. And around that like April, May period, I'm very bogged down in my role of it, which is a lot of the digital media and
Hmm.
marketing stuff.
Hmm. But luckily for you, you're able to do that remotely wherever you are in the world. And I did just hear you say, as far as the band goes, that you're starting to miss more and more of the shows, at least during this period of time, and that's sad for you. I can imagine that really is sad, because this has been a project that you've been on for a really long time and a big portion of your life now. So it sounds like you're kind of wading into the water of, like, what does my life look like moving forward now? Like, not, I'm not, this is going to be edited, so I'm not like trying to like say you're leaving your band or anything like that. um
You the sad violent. You could edit that and make it look like that was a thing.
that was the thing, yeah.
It'd actually be funny if you did that. Don't do
I
that.
think it will. um but like starting to question, like, I'm getting, is my life moving in a direction that is different, and what is that going to look like now?
Yeah. So the touring has become like the thing I do. I don't teach anymore. Well, I guess I do the touring and I do Beard Fest and
Yeah.
other random gigs, but that's the main thing that I do. And in a certain way, that's cool because with that comes with some of the simplicity that I was speaking to in the beginning. It might not be a 9 to 5 and it might not be a normal schedule, but I can mentally compartmentalize. I can say the part of my life that is work is this part.
Yeah.
It's not some random vague thing that I can't even mentally keep track of. It's this, it's all in there. So it has that upside. The downside is that it's such a grind. We have a lot of rehearsals, and I'm away in North Jersey for a lot of many weeks. In 2022, we were rehearsing like 5 days a week, and we had weeks off and we had time off, but I was away a lot in the first
Yeah.
year that I was in this band. It's been a little less this year and a little more shows, which is good, but it's a lot of being away from home. It's a lot of erratic schedule stuff, and some guys do this for their whole lives. There's older guys in the band who have played with legends for decades, and I'm not sure if that's the path for me. So, I'm kind of a homebody in certain ways.
Yeah.
I also, like I said earlier, I feel like I like always need to keep moving. So at some point, just in terms of my own like creative flame for this and desire for other things, it could be time to move on at some point. And
Right.
so I'm thinking to myself, like, all right, like I don't think I want to do this forever. So what is next? I don't know. So
Right.
yeah, like you said, I guess I'm in sort of a state of constant transition as well.
Yeah, but it connects to that theme that we were talking about a little bit ago about, paying more attention to the overall kind of arc and trajectory, right? Like, you're doing this stuff right now and you're, I assume, enjoying it. Otherwise, you probably would have canned it a long time ago.
I do
Uh,
love it. I do love it.
right. So you're loving it right now, but you're also saying, this may not be where I am forever,
Right.
right? This could be like this season of my life. I'm doing this, and I'm getting a lot out of it. I'm meeting people, I'm playing a lot, I'm doing stuff, right? But as far as my overall trajectory, I might do a bunch of things that are way different than this, and it will still be, a successful life experience as a musician, as an artist, as somebody that makes things and puts it out into the world for other people to connect with.
I hope to do a bunch of different things
Yeah.
over the course of many years. I think it's beautiful when I meet older people who like transitioned careers in their like 40s or 50s, or even not even career related, when people like start new relationships, or like when I meet like an older person who like just got married or something like that. I always think that those things are beautiful because I feel like there is this impression that there like comes an age where your life comes together and then like that's it or something.
Yeah.
And it's possible that that was at one point more true when in olden times, or I don't know, whatever, however you want to say it, like people would stay
I'm with
in
you.
a career for 40
Yeah.
years. My grandpa worked
Mhm.
as an he was, I believe, an editor on a newspaper for like 40 or 50 years or something like that. I can't
Wow.
imagine that. I can't
Wow.
imagine that. I always feel like I need to like be stimulated by new things, and I want to live in other countries. I want to try other things.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm just like sort of follow my fascinations and just live a varied and stimulating life. And
Yeah.
I don't know where
Yeah.
it'll take me.
Well, I think I mean, that whole thing, there's been so much has changed in our world, the way we live, the things that we value, the the makeup of our family structures and everything like that, that it was almost like a necessity to have that kind of stability and the expectation that you were going to have that stable career. um because also if you stayed there, you probably got like taken care of at the end. Whereas like today, yeah, life is way different and we value so many different things, that it's unheard of almost to remain, I think, in a job. I think the data is saying something like 5 years is a long time, 3 years is a long time.
Yeah, and that is kind of what you just said is sort of the trade-off of the modern life, is that maybe it might be more stimulating to keep moving every 5 years or something like that. However, it might not be conducive to long-term security.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
whereas, back in the day, people would, like you said, be taken care of when they like retired.
Right. Things like pensions, right? Everybody was like
Yeah.
a thing back then. Not today so much. Right.
Now I'm just like trying to make up for it by like making sure I, contribute to my IRA and like just
Right.
like be, yeah, that is something that I feel compelled to try to be smart about. I'm not saying that I like know a lot about that or that I've been as smart as I could be or whatever,
Sure.
but um I want to be able to do the things that I want to do and not be, crushed by like having to take a bunch of wedding gigs or have so many students that I'm just exhausted or
Right.
and of course we all do things we don't want to do, and that's part of life, and
Yeah.
that's fine. You
It is
have to.
part of life. It's part of the experience too. But how can you curate your life in such a way that allows you to maybe have more on one side of that coin than the other side of that coin, right? How can you do
Yeah,
that?
while preserving the idea of some kind of a long-term stability, because
Yeah.
like what I was going to say was like I want to be able to do the things that I want to do and feel like I have a sense of freedom, but then the other part of it is I want to feel that sense over time. I want to still feel that way decades from now. So how
Yeah.
can I set my life up so that I can basically do the things that I want to do over the span of my life and have long-term security? I'm still learning about that, so I'm not like here to like say here's how you do it. So if you have any tips, let me know.
For sure. Well, definitely thinking about, I'm glad that you're saying this because you're someone who is like in the game, right? Really like doing what he loves, and doing lots of different things. Um, is still on the younger side of things in terms of just like biological age. And you're thinking about the importance of saving and all of those seemingly boring things, but that is what's going to allow you to continue to do what you want to do in life and not get weighed down on the wrong side or the wrong end of your life with so much like, oh my god, how am I going to live now regret.
Yeah, and it's even more important for musicians because
Yeah.
like some people can accomplish that just by like being in a field where you make a lot of money.
Right.
But this is music. We're not
Yeah.
making a lot of money, so it's like we
Right.
gotta we gotta figure
Right.
it out.
Right. I
By
mean,
being really smart about the money that we do make.
exactly, exactly. And that takes thought, that takes planning. And that is definitely something that I touch on when I'm working with artists, that planning. Like how are you going to be strategic with, the money that you do bring in from your work so that you can keep making work and so that you can live the level or the quality of life that you want to live and deserve to live, because everybody deserves to live, you know comfortably, right? Or at least with all of their needs met in a way that allows them to feel secure. So, yeah. Hey, listen, this has been an awesome conversation. I'm so glad that we had it. We talked about a bunch of different things. Can you, Sam, just give people a little bit of an idea of where they might be able to find you? And then I will also include that in the description of the episode as well.
Sure. So my main thing is my YouTube channel. You can just search Sam Gutman on YouTube, Gutman, and that's where I make videos, kind of documenting the various things that I do, gigs, educational stuff, and then also check out my band Out of the Beard Space.
Awesome.
It's a band that I've been in for like 12 years. It's a group of friends that grew up together and make a bunch of awesome, crazy music.
It's awesome, crazy music. Yeah, if you haven't heard of the band, if you haven't heard the music, everybody definitely check that out. I really love listening to it. And also Sam's Instagram account, you like post some pretty awesome reels of like your behind the scenes kind of experiences too.
Yes.
That spinny turny stage thing that she has
Yeah.
is like pretty sweet looking.
Yeah, that was just for that festival, and I didn't know that that was going to happen until like the moment it happened.
Okay.
I was
You
my
had no
mind
idea, and then it
was
just like
pretty
started to
blown.
rotate.
Well, like we had already sound checked, and then we got to play, and then the whole everything was like behind the stage, facing the other way, and somebody was like, "Oh yeah, this is going to spin around," and I was like,
That's
"How is
awesome.
that going to happen?" And then it happened like minutes later. So
And you're like, oh,
my
they
mind
were
was blown.
it happened. That's awesome. Cool. Well, I will include all of that information in the bottom here on the show notes, everybody. And Sam, thank you so much for your time, taking time out of your busy schedule. And I hope that you have awesome travels coming up.
Thank you, and thank you for the great conversation.
Definitely. See you later, everybody. This has been the Bold Creatives Collective podcast. I'm TJ, and this is Sam, and I will check you out. What am I saying? I will talk to you, and you'll hear me
You can check
next episode as well. Have a great one, everybody.
it out.